Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today we will be testing out the Benchmade Adamas as I promised last week. We're going to be doing the same round of tests that I did with the Microtech MSI. We have 20 zip ties all chain linked together that we're going to cut through. We have two 4-foot pieces of rope. We're going to slice through all of those. Have the block of pine wood here that I'm going to do 10 cuts on. And before we start, we're going to do a slice through this thin sheet of notebook paper to see how it cuts before, and then we're going to do the same thing after to see how the edge retention is on it. Let's get started. Alrighty, so we'll start off with the initial paper cut test here. This is just some thin notebook paper. I couldn't find any phone book paper lying around, unfortunately. It's getting a little trickier to find these days. Let's see what it does. Like I said, this is a pretty thick blade. I don't know how well you guys can see on there. So, I mean, I'm not exactly expecting it to be like a scalpel, but it still does all right. Onto the rope. All right, everybody, here's the first 4-foot section of rope. Let's get to cutting. Not bad. Next. Alrighty, did pretty decent with the rope there. This is, like I said before, some pretty crappy rope, but I need to use it all so we don't waste it. On to the zip ties. All 20 of them. Alright, seems like it started to lose a little bit of its edge there. We'll see how it does with the second 4-foot piece of rope, and then it'll be on to the wooden block, and then we'll see how it does with edge retention. Time for the final rope cut here. Let's get moving. All right, last piece of rope. Must be out of shape. I had to catch my breath for a second there. All right, on to the final one. 10 cuts on the block of wood. Yeah, it did not seem to do quite as well as the MSI did last week there. It was still feather sticking pretty good even after all those tests. So, I don't know. We'll see how it does on the paper there. So I wasn't going to do this one initially because we didn't do it with the MSI, but you know what? This thing looks like it can handle it. Let's do some tip tests and see what it can do. Let us see. The tip is not broken. So that's good. All right, so it actually held up pretty well with that. Let's do the final paper cut here and see if it can still do it or not. Stupid GoPros. Anyways. Hey. You know, it's better than I'd hoped for, actually. It can still somewhat cut. I mean, like I said, it's not exactly the smoothest cutter out there, but it's also a pretty thick blade. I'll put all the links down in the description below for the video so you guys can see the specifications for yourself because I don't know them off the top of my head. I just test these things. Let's go to the final review. All right, everybody. So overall, this thing did pretty decent. Like I said, it cut the rope well considering it's the half serrated blade there. Sorry, the GoPro kicked on the side there. I don't know why. I think the thing's possessed or something. It's the half serrated, half fine edge drop point with the Desert Tan G10. And like I said, the half serrations on it there sometimes can get in the way, especially for cutting the zip ties. I actually had problems where it was kind of catching towards the end there, and then it would just slide off the rest of the blade before it actually cut. And it did make a bit of a mess of the rope a little bit there, but overall it did pretty decent with that. I was impressed it was still able to cut the paper and do it fairly clean too. I wasn't expecting it to be able to do that. The wood cutting, this thing isn't, I wouldn't call it a very good carver. This is more of a heavy duty utility knife. This thing's more for prying open lids than it is doing whittling. You can still do it, but like I said, the MSI seemed to do a little bit better in that department for carving. The price range on these, when I first bought this knife, I got this for just under $180. I bought it when I was stationed down in Virginia. I got a little bit of a better deal on it there. Apparently through Benchmade now, these are going for over $300, which I couldn't believe that they'd gone up that much just in a couple of years. I've had this knife for about 5 years now. As far as toughness goes, like I said, you can see I went pretty deep into the block of wood with it here. And like I said, the tip did not bend, snap, or break at all. It's still just as pointy on the end there. So that's a good mark for this thing. This thing can take quite a bit of abuse. I know some of the mini Adamases did have some issues with the locking mechanism. If you guys follow Dutch Bushcraft Knives, they did a video about the mini Adamas, and under batoning, sometimes the crossbar lock would disengage on it. I hadn't heard of any cases of that happening with the full-size ones here. I personally have never had any issues. So, but like I said, as long as you use it as just a knife, this thing can still take quite a bit of abuse. So hope you guys enjoyed. Next week, we'll probably try to step it down to something a little more budget-friendly, maybe one of the buck knives. So hope you guys enjoyed. God bless you, and I'll see you all next time.